So, welcome everybody. This is the second public talk of the series for this semester. There'll be a wide variety of people, but today we have one of our own doing a very important topic for us who are interested in education in translation. So that. Some of you might not know, so let me read the bio of our special guest today. Maria is a Tibetologist, Dharma translator, and interpreter. She holds a PhD in Buddhist Studies from the International Buddhist College, Thailand, an MA in Translation, Textual Interpretation, and Philology here at Rangjung Yeshe Institute, as well as a PhD. This is always interesting, that side of her, in political science from the National Academy of Science in Ukraine. Her research focuses on the study and translation of Mahāyāna sūtras and śāstras through comparative analysis of Dunhuang manuscripts and Tibetan canonical text, emphasizing philological inquiry, textual transmission, and the doctrinal development of Buddhist philosophical traditions. So please welcome Maria with me.
Thank you very much for warm welcoming and introduction, Diane, and also for this opportunity to speak to you today about this important topic of translation and AI. So I will not touch on pedagogy as such today because I already spoke about it a little bit during our symposium of AI use, AI and philosophy and scholar practitioner held last year in November, like 2024, November 2024, was it? No, yeah, 2025. Which year we are in? And today I'm more, and then, like my reflections on pedagogy and like teaching, translation, translators training. I dedicated one paper on it. It is called Vanishing Untranslated, published in the Contemporary Buddhism magazine. I also posted it on my Academia EU profile, so you can see there if you're interested. Today, I'm more concerned with the cognitive and affective influence of AI use for translators in training. So why I'm concerned with this? Primarily because I'm teaching translation here at RY, and I'm also a Dharma translator myself, and somehow I'm also serious about this role of an educator, and I'm really concerned of the future of Dharma translation. And a disclaimer, I'm not anti-AI. I'm endlessly fascinated by AI, and I'm endlessly eager to explore AI. However, what I'm observing is quite concerning for me. There's some concerns which are urgent. So, and they have to do mostly with the cognitive and affective influence of AI on the translators in training. So, in my syllabi of my translation courses here on BA level and MA level, I always put prohibitive AI use policies, and I explain to my students reasons behind them. Yeah? But however, not all of you have the chance to come to study advanced classical Tibetan here or do translation MA. That's why it would be probably good if I share some of my thoughts. These are just my thoughts, yeah? And I'm not a specialist in cognitive science by no means. Yeah? As you have heard, I have background in international relations and political science. I also did MA in international humanitarian action and was involved in management of human rights and law enforcement projects in Ukraine, which also give me some thoughts related to project management. So this is like just something I'd like to share with you today. So my aim is just about 1 hour of my presentation, and then we will open the floor for discussion, for Q&A. Okay. So first of all, the main thesis for today's talk is that AI-powered translation tools can shortcut the cognitive and affective processes that are essential to becoming a skilled translator, especially when they are used too early in training. And the question that I would like to ask you is, if a machine gives you a fluent translation in 2 seconds, what exactly are you learning? So this is just now to tune in to the topic. And next, I'd like to begin with a general overview of the global tendencies and what is happening as I see it in the Buddhist studies, because of course Buddhist studies is just tiny drop, a reflection of what's going on globally, and AI is a global thing, right? We are not the only field which is affected by AI, right? So AI is everywhere, and I think this is the biggest and the most important thing which is affecting already many spheres of our life and will affect many more spheres of our life. So first of all, like globally, as you know, there is this accelerating rates towards superintelligence. And this AI intervention is mostly unaccountable. What do I mean by unaccountable? So societies are not asked for the approval or permission when any new AI technologies are being introduced. And it affects many people's jobs, many people's lives, and we are not an exception, right? So then if you look at our field and translation, not only from classical Buddhist languages such as Sanskrit, Tibetan, etc., but even from other languages, there is this rapid accuracy gains across general AI and specialized translation systems. So AI improves very quickly. Like 2 years ago, the only Claude I knew was Claude Monet. And now somehow Claude became like my neighbor, someone I need to consult before every translation assignment I give to my students. And not only Claude, also ChatGPT, Gemini, and Dharma Mitra, whom I prefer to call Dharma Shuttle. Yeah, all of those somehow, they became part of my life. Not because I wanted, once again, right? But because I have to. Why? Because my students, they're much more advanced in AI use than I am. And so like I'm constantly learning from them. Which new AI tool is there? Which one is more effective, etc. So that's why like AI became part of my life as a educator, first of all, as a teacher of translation and translation studies, scholar. And AI improves very quickly, surprisingly quickly. So, like if you want my rough estimate, I would say that now AI, especially the specialized AI tools like Dharma Mitra, for example, translates better than my advanced classical BA students. Translates from Tibetan and is getting better. It's already like more or less on the level of my MA translation, MA students. Of course, it depends on the context, but if you take like general sutra context, general like instruction context, AI is doing good, surprisingly well. And of course, this is what gives me a lot of headache, because I need to adapt my work to this new phenomenon called AI. Yeah? And what is more, you see, like AI translation tools, for example, Dharma Mitra started just as a translation tool, right? So like there was this function, English, you just put some Tibetan text, click on English, some English comes up. Yeah? But still, I had freedom, to grill my students on grammatical analysis, textual interpretation. But now, guess what? There is also a function of English explained, right? Which immediately provides grammatical analysis, textual interpretation, all of it, right? So you see, it's like covers more and more areas of what we call textual studies. And also, we had this very important workshop on AI use delivered by Ngawan Tinle. Yeah, she's the main figure behind the new tool called Dharmadutta, before he was one of the developers and inspirers of Menlong AI. Yeah. And he said that they have like their energy is contagious, and like their efforts are really immeasurable. And he said that they also aim to introduce an educational tool, basically that anyone who would like to master Buddhist philosophy, or let's say classical Tibetan or Sanskrit, they will be able to access individualized, specialized educational tool developed by them. See, so basically it's also getting into the field of education also, translators training. So then, also I observed that more and more donors in the field of, those who support developments in Buddhist Studies translation, they also engage into sponsoring these developers, AI tools. And what happens, I'm concerned that they're doing it without primarily engaging into risk and feasibility assessment. As someone who is trained in the theory of project management, I know that any intervention in any field, whether it's humanitarian field, educational field, you should always be preceded by a very careful analysis of feasibility and risks. For example, if we create such a tool, educational tool, how it will affect educational institutions, for example, like our institution, right? Just imagine if someone can go and take such a course for free, and it is a really good individualized one-to-one course. Why would such a person come here and pay in order to study, let's say, classical Tibetan or Sanskrit? Okay, so what is the impact on the field, on the educational field? And we also see that already in the world, universities, which are leading universities, not, some shady, cheap, kind of poor universities, they announce closure of translation training and linguistic programs, language studies. They say that they will not take any new students to study languages, like modern languages. In the US also, it happens in the UK, right? So it is just the beginning. Because if someone can put on goggles and immediately have a text translated, like new AirPods, which will translate into their ear, why they would spend time, effort, and money in order to study foreign language, right? Of course, there will be also some small number of dedicated and smart people who understand this is not the same, that we still need to study languages, and especially when it comes to the Dharma studies. We cannot understand Dharma if we don't know the source language, right? And as I often discourage my students saying, and if you think that just knowing Tibetan is enough, you're really, mistaken, because you also must know Sanskrit in order to understand Tibetan, right? Etc. So, and without it, you cannot understand Dharma, right? There is this cycle of enforced positivity in donor developer, like a donor implementer activity. What I mean, you see, it's like donors, when they sponsor something, they want to have positive result, right? So that's why what happens. Implementers, they usually produce reports, and general feedback, which is very positive. Why donors want this positive feedback? Because they also have their own sponsors, who want to know that their money are applied for something which is good, right? Something which is useful. And these donors want to demonstrate that, we are doing something very good, so give us more money, right? So basically, this is something which stands behind, in my opinion, when these negative effects somehow held, not displayed, at least, probably, somewhere you can see something, but not much. This was also the reason why, as soon as I have seen the program of the public lectures for the fall semester, which Diane sent us in August, immediately I contacted her and I was like, Diane, I want to give talk on this topic, because as soon as I seen that Ngawantin Lay will speak about AI, and I already met him and I've seen how contagiously enthusiastic he is, And I knew that he will not speak about any negative influence of AI. Yeah? That's why I wanted to counterbalance it a little bit at least, to warn you, to explain to you what's actually going on. What are the possible damaging effects of AI use? Because he's amazing, really. His workshop was very useful. There were very few of you there. There are recordings of this workshop. So if you're interested, you must watch it because what he was saying, it is directly relatable to anyone who wishes to be a translator, anyone who thinks that he or she will spend the rest of their days teaching. Yeah? I'm completely prepared that me and my cat, will just go plant potatoes and it will happen very soon. I mean, this is general anitya mitakva situation, impermanent situation. It's not only our situation, right? 99% of jobs will be lost due to AI, right? It's not a secret. But still, if you want to know what is coming, watch this workshop, recordings of this workshop. Yeah, so one more thing, Ngawang, he also brought into this workshop representatives of some important translation projects, among them Kinsey Vision. And then Kinsey Vision presented their new cat tool called Loshimi. And the director, Drolma Gunther, in her presentation, she said that Kinsey Vision's translation policy allows to use AI for the generation of the first translation draft. I was quite shocked to hear that, honestly. So I questioned it and I asked, but why? Why do you allow it? And she said, just because we cannot control it. That's why we allow it. But she said, our translators, they don't use it for the first draft. And of course, I don't know. Those translators of Kinsey Vision, I know. I don't doubt that they probably don't do it, right? But new generation of translators, which message do they receive? You see, Kinsey Vision is one of the leading translation projects, right? Also, I was told by my supervisor, Matthias Albini, that 84,000 also discusses the possibility of translating the rest of the Kangyur with the use of AI, basically reducing the role of the humans to post-editing. And my reaction was if you want to translate the rest of Kangyur with AI, maybe better not to translate it at all, just leave it untranslated. Even if it is just on the level of discussion, it immediately sends a certain message. And of course, I am concerned, first of all, for my children, my students, right? So which message is sent that it is okay? Using AI for generation of the first draft is okay. And I will explain you today that it is not okay. And what is more, here at RY, which is a Buddhist university, we also not only just teaching language for the sake of, some intellectual entertainment, but we are also trying to transmit certain values. So what are those values we are trying to transmit? First of all, this which our founder, Chökyi Rinpoche, endlessly speaks about is the ideal of a scholar practitioner, Kedru. Yeah? It's not just enough to know the language. You also need to practice the Dharma to be qualified to translate the Dharma, right? Endlessly, he's saying that Dharma is unlike any other sort of literature. Dharma is a tool to bring beings to liberation and complete awakening, right? We endlessly speak about pure motivation of bodhicitta. Why do we translate the Dharma? No, not for fun, right? We are translating the Dharma in order to give beings possibility through this translated text to attain liberation and awakening. You see, so this is values we are trying to transmit here, right? And we consider them very important. So then, if you say, someone says that AI can do it, AI is not Buddhist, doesn't have motivation. No, bodhicitta is not a scholar practitioner. This is just a statistical tool. How AI decides on translation choices, how it makes translation choices, just statistical count, basically, right? Nothing else. It is just a machine, statistical machine. So if you say that, AI can do it, then which values are we talking about, you see? So I'm really concerned about that as well. Okay, so moving on. So now, what does learning to translate involve? So learning to translate means learning to interpret meaning, navigate ambiguity, and justify interpretative choices. And translation and translation training is inherently effortful because students, and of course also translators, they need to confront difficulty and learn to sit, to remain with uncertainty, to digest ambiguity, etc. Yeah? And translation is one of those activities which are only mastered through training. So it's not just enough, to read about how to translate. You can only learn to translate by translating. It's the only way. So without all these processes, students cannot develop into qualified translators. So then also, translation is an emotional and identity based because students build confidence and motivation through struggle, revision, and success. So then, a feeling of ownership over a translation decision is a key to seeing oneself as a translator rather than just a language user. And what happens that AI tools interfere with translator training, and it happens often invisibly. Basically, you're not conscious of what is going on. And although, this cognitive and affective influence of AI, these studies are already here, right? So they are available. But somehow, what I noticed, they're not profiled. For example, there is already research that tells us that watching reels is as damaging for the brain as alcohol consumption. Right? But when you open reels in Facebook, for example, does it tell you, how it is written on alcohol bottle? Yeah, alcohol kills, smoking kills. So don't watch this reel, it will kill your brain, right? Nothing. So then if you wonder why, just because owners of Facebook, for example, and the owner of X, is it X? Twitter is X. They are in this race for super intelligence. They are the guys, you see, basically. So that's why, I think, and there is no more freedom of media in the United States, right? So it is influenced, it is manipulated. So information, also there is no more, as far as I can see, freedom of research there. And the US and China are two main leaders in this race towards superintelligence. All these reasons we need to keep in mind when somehow this information about this interference is not easily available. It is available. You can find it. Everything I will tell you today is not, it's not that I did my own research. No way. I don't have time for that. But it is not easily available. So, and those interferences, they're of two types: cognitive risks and affective consequences. So first of all, I'd like to cover the following cognitive risks. First of all, it's cognitive offloading and bypassing, priming effects, acceptance bias, reduced retrieval practice, and illusion of fluency. So these 5. There are many more for sure, but just these main 5 ones. So first 2, they're interconnected. So cognitive offloading and cognitive bypassing. So what is cognitive offloading? First of all, maybe we need to understand why AI is so attractive and even addictive to us. As you know, probably AI addiction is already classified as official type of addictions. Addiction to chat boxes. Chat box addiction is already an official type of addiction, just like drug addiction, or alcohol addiction, or gaming addiction, etc. So then, AI is very attractive to us. Why? It has to do with our biology and evolution. because, biologically, brain is the major energy consumer. Brain consumes 20% of our body's energy. And we evolved as a species in the constant deficit of energy, of sources, resources, food, etc. So we are programmed biologically so that we want to save energy. See, this is like biologically how we are. Since AI can take on itself these cognitive processes which are so energy consuming, that's why it's so attractive for us. See, we might not even understand why I like it, why I'm so pulled to it, why it's so attractive to me. Biologically, it is so. See, this is the first thing we need to understand. Then this is what happens. Cognitive offloading involves using tools to free up mental resources. Sometimes we do it in order to do more complex tasks, but not necessarily. Yeah, so, for example, when you ask AI to create a vocab list for you instead of, creating vocabulary yourself, doing something else, you're not totally delegating your learning and cognitive processes, but you help AI, you ask AI for help. Yeah, so it's cognitive offloading. It's not, always very negative. It can be, also useful, basically when we use AI for doing some tasks to help us. And AI can be very useful and time-saving. For example, Dharma Mitra, which is sometimes called Dharma Shatru, it has very useful tool called Dharma Nexus and research tool. Yeah, so you can easily find quotations in the text which come from canonical collections like Dirge Kangyur and Tengyur. It's easy, basically you just put on some quotation you are using for, and the source will come. It saves a lot of time in the work of annotated translation, right? Because it's endless time we spend using for the sources of quotations. Yeah? Dharma Nexus can help with this, and this is very useful, right? So I'm not saying that all AI is necessarily negative. Yeah? Primarily, when I speak about negativity, I speak about translation tools that which can produce a first draft translation, generate translation for you. Yeah, this is my primary concern. So this has to do with cognitive bypassing. It is also called cognitive outsourcing in the context of AI. This is when we use AI tools to skip the cognitive process entirely. See? So we let the machine do the thinking. We don't do any thinking at all. So this is what happens, right? You prepare your homework for a translation class, and text is not easy, of course, especially if you're in advanced class, because in the advanced class, we deal with the untranslated text. Yeah? Here at RY, we have this certain sequence, process. For the first 2 years, students translate texts which are translated already, so they are also given English translation and Tibetan. But when they come to the 3rd year and 4th year, there is no translation. Only Tibetan is given. Then, they need to spend time with it, right? To understand it, to look up all the words, put these words into context, somehow generate meaning, right? Contextually interpret it. It takes time. It is not easy. You see, in my conviction, in my understanding, translation is not supposed to be fast. It is a slow, contemplative process. You see, that's why when Galantin told me, Maria, we will do it fast for you. You'll be able to translate fast. You'll be able to translate more. I don't want to translate more, and I don't want to translate fast. I just like how it is. It is a very slow, contemplative process, processing. It is not supposed to be fast and easy. No way, right? That's why it is very attractive for us, this idea that, we can just skip this whole difficult process entirely. Just give it to AI and we'll just, in 2 seconds, we'll give you a translation. This translation will look feasible, make sense, will be smooth, right? So okay, what happens then? you get some hormones involved, dopamine increase. You have this satisfaction. Oh, I got it. I didn't put any effort. I got it. Yeah? Dopamine is addictive. You see? So that's why we like it. Just like any other drug, we like it. Let's not, deny it. But cognitive bypassing is dangerous because just like in any other activity, when we need to build up strength, build up capacity, I have like yoga teachers here, etc. Right? Like if you want to build up capacity, strength, you need to exercise, right? For example, if you want to become strong, you need to lift weights. If you just, pretend that you lift weights, someone else, like those TikTokers, yeah, someone like weights them for them, and they just look very cool on TikTok video, right? Looks nice, but do they build any strength? No, right? Same thing here. If you skip this difficult, challenging cognitive processes, you don't build up capacities. You see? So then what are we doing? Just, checking this translation provided by AI, probably, looking in the dictionary, like few words we can check. But if it makes sense, sometimes we are like, just, okay, it's good. Yeah. Take it to classroom, yeah, etc. Right? So then instead of translating, students just approve what the machine produces. Then the tool, AI, becomes the problem solver. Student is not a problem solver anymore. And this is very dangerous. So why it matters for the translator training? So, like effective translators, they should learn how to identify problems, generate, compare solutions, take responsibility upon their final translation decisions. So if they don't do it, gradually they become tool dependent. You see, like with AI, probably they can perform. Without AI, they are not able to perform. And, they struggle without AI, so they are completely dependent. And they didn't build up this metacognitive control needed for complex translation tasks. So they are incapable as independent translators. So I repeat, translation competence is developed through effortful, forceful engagement, only like this. We need to face ambiguity in meaning, different competing linguistic options, contextual and pragmatic constraints. There's no way we can do without them, you see? And then skills develop through use, through constant practice. But, if AI does all this thinking, decision-making, then students don't do these essential practices. And then over time, they do not develop competence necessary for becoming a qualified translator. That's the first one. Then the second one is called priming effects. Yes, so what is priming effects? This is even when students intend to translate independently, as soon as they see AI output, it influences them. So basically, this machine phrasing, or like the framework of the translation, it anchors the translator. It kind of shapes what we consider acceptable and possible. And, it's not happens rationally. That's why this is, the reason why I was so surprised to see that AI is permitted for generation of the first translation draft. Because as soon as we see first translation draft, it influences us. You see, it frames us. It already provides us interpretative framework. And it's very difficult, to think beyond it because we are already influenced. We're already framed in a sense, you see. And this is actually very important. But there is never just a single textual interpretation. Translation is a constant, endless negotiation of meaning. Often, almost always, there are competing possible interpretations. We can take it like this, we can take it like that, right? So we need to compare those translation options, take decisions and understand what we are doing when we're taking decisions, yeah? So then what happens? AI usually presents just only one translation option and it appears authoritative, right? It appears good. So then even if, we think that we are making independent decisions, we are not. it is already decided subconsciously. A choice is made. We just follow this choice by AI. As a result, students do not develop capacity to conceptualize multiple translation strategies. This is what I'm talking about. Like, okay, oh, I can take it like this. Oh, no, probably differently, right? It's always an ocean of meanings and interpretations, especially when it comes to Dharma translation. Yeah? And it is connected to acceptance bias. So basically, just because AI outputs sound fluent and confident, we trust them. Yeah? So we just assume correctness and we stop questioning meaning. Once again, behind it are some biological reasons. We are designed, developed in a way when we trust that or those who are more intelligent than us, right? We needed it in order to survive. Imagine like you're in a tribe, right? Someone is a wise and experienced one. Yeah? So we need to believe these people in order to survive because, we think they know better, right? And we do it irrationally without understanding what is happening. So then why do we trust AI? First of all, because AI is already more intelligent than us. You see, if we take like general IQ, of course, you can question whether we can measure intelligence with IQ, but still, if we take general IQ, usually humans have IQ of about 100, right? Like the best of us probably have intelligence of 120. I don't know, 130, probably some, yeah, but it's like an exceptional exception. So around like 100, 110 probably. AI already has IQ of 130 to 150. In some tasks, AI already performs on the 150 IQ level. And understand how IQ grows. It is exponential growth. It goes like this, which means that every percent matters more. You see, like first it just starts slowly, then like exponential growth. So then, difference in 10% in the human world, it means a lot. You see, those who are the best scholars, the best leaders, those who have higher IQ, right? It's only like difference probably in 10 points. So imagine in few years, AI will have like 160, 180, 200, 500, difference. It is huge. You see, it's a huge difference. So it will be incomparably more smart, more intelligent than we are. And it will influence our decisions even more because we will trust AI even more because it is more intelligent. You see? And once again, do we rationalize it? Do we understand why do I trust AI translation option? Because I think AI is more intelligent than I am. See? So then what happens? That students or those in training, they must learn to question even a well-formed target text. Because AI, in my experience, in 99% cases, it provides a translation option which makes sense. It's not like it comes up with some senseless mumble. Yeah? It always usually makes sense. But this sense is manipulated in many, many cases because it can take something wrong, something which it doesn't know or cannot interpret. It just fits into the general context, changing the whole meaning altogether. Yeah? However, it has this smoothness, grammatical smoothness. And then we have this tendency to take it uncritically. And then what happens? With time, we become incapable of critical engagement and judgment. We cannot, evaluate critically the source text and the target text. We just accept the translation option. And we don't have this capacity of analytical scrutiny. So next one is reduced retrieval practice. It has more to do with language learning. Yeah, but as you know, language learning is indispensable for translation training. So retrieval practice means pulling knowledge from memory. And here we speak about vocabulary, like syntactic constructions, etc. So AI removes the need to retrieve vocabulary and syntactic structures from memory. Just replace and recall with recognition. So then what happens? Our need to retrieve anything dramatically decreases. And without retrieval, we retain much less. Because how do we retain something? We learn and then we use it. We use it. When we use it, we kind of recall it once again, right? And this is how we retain it in memory. So then what happens? Students become not confident because they don't have retained vocabulary. They don't need it. Why do you just give it to AI, it will give you all the vocabulary. Why do you need to learn it once again, right? It's cognitive offloading. If it can do it for me, if I always have this, endless source of interpretation with me, why do I need to learn vocabulary? It's difficult to learn, right? So we don't. And then their language knowledge remains shallow and unstable. Basically, they are not proficient in the language from which they're supposed to translate. And the last cognitive consequence is called illusion of fluency. Illusion of fluency is not, created by AI. It existed before AI, but AI increased this risk, this effect. So what it is a cognitive bias that manifests as an overestimation of our own capabilities, creating a gap between perceived and actual expertise that often remains unrecognized. So you see what happens. Someone is not capable of translating independently, right? But with the reliance on AI, they become capable, you see, and it gives them this illusion that they're capable. For example, I'm not strong in Sanskrit, but with the use of AI, I become strong in Sanskrit, right? So it gives me this illusion that I'm proficient with Sanskrit. I can just translate from Sanskrit, right? So basically, AI stimulates this illusion of fluency, which is very dangerous. So imagine what can happen now with this availability of translation tools. There are many beings in this world who, although they have, kind of good intentions, they're endlessly deluded and they're also arrogant. What happens if these people just give any text to AI, it generates some translation. This translation looks good to them. They don't have any capacity to evaluate correctness of this translation. They don't have any knowledge to judge on it. They didn't receive any explanation on the text, but, just something sounds interesting to them. Whatever, esoteric text, Dzogchen text, Mahamudra text, whatever, right? Easy. Just give it to AI, something comes up, and then they share it. And it becomes easily available. It goes there into cyberspace. Anyone can access it. And these people, these users, they also have no capacity to judge on accuracy of this text. And then they use such texts for their own practice. What happens? It's a great danger. Once again, Dharma is a tool to bring us to awakening. But what if this is not correct Dharma? Where will it bring us? You see? When people think like, I can do it, I'm fluent. This is unrecognized bias, once again, which is dangerous. And guess what? This cognitive consequences don't go alone, because they do not stay only cognitive. They also shape how students feel about their translation. So when thinking is outsourced, emotional engagement declines as well. So this is how we come to affective consequences. I will just mention a few. Loss of ownership, frustration and alienation, eroded confidence and disruption of translators' identity. These four. So first of all, if students or translators actually, like speaking about students, but honestly, even trained translators, if they constantly rely on AI, they will face very similar, if not the same consequences. You see, so then what happens? If students use AI constantly or like continuously, they may feel that, this AI-generated translations do not sound like them. This work feels generic, and also they don't experience satisfaction that comes from solving problems. Because, how do we feel fulfillment? We face a problem, right? We put some effort, we overcome this problem. This is how we feel fulfilled. We feel satisfied, we achieved something. However, if, we don't achieve anything, right? AI does all the work. We feel like, we don't own it. This is what happens, when students also generate their papers with AI. They sometimes don't know what is written in that paper, right? That's why, like, I had to introduce presentations in my methodology class. At least, like if they generate papers with AI, they will need to read what is generated, to present in class. Because, sometimes they just generate a paper, submit a paper. They don't own the paper. It's like completely, something apart from them, right? So then what happens? There's no personal investment. And then there's no joy and accomplishment. And then what happens? No motivation to engage in it, to revise it, to improve. Right? So loss of ownership. It is also connected to frustration and alienation. So sometimes, like when it comes to translation, like students see this translation drafts, AI-generated translation drafts, and they sense that something is missed, something is off, but they don't have capacity to improve it, on their own, because they don't have capacity to actually interpret the meaning. So like it feels, it's not correct, but they cannot make it right for them. Yes. So then what comes? Frustration. They're unsatisfied with what they have and they're not able to make it right for them. So then translation becomes, the source of frustration and dissatisfaction instead of becoming a source of joy and fulfillment. The third one is eroded confidence. So you see, like I already explained why AI looks so confident and better and faster than we are. So then if we constantly face this, that, machine is better than us, once again, subconsciously, we start questioning our own abilities. Like we become more and more dependent on that which we consider to be better than us. And then what happens? We are less willing to take risks. We always over-relied on some external validation. And then we also don't have confidence in our independent judgment. Basically, we lose capacity to make our own translation decisions, because we feel that we're not good enough to do it. We're not capable of doing it. And then what happens? Confidence, once it is undermined, it is difficult to rebuild. Yeah. And finally, the last one, disruption of translator identity. You see, like translators, although our purpose in Dharma is supposed to be elimination of any identity, right? Going beyond self, etc. But still, there is something we call identity and professional pride, in a good sense. What does it mean? A translator who is ethical, who is responsible, all of it has to do with the translator's identity. But then, when AI makes all the decisions and we don't make any decisions on our own, then, our identity as a translator is disrupted. And we rather feel ourselves as an editor, like kind of checker after the AI, kind of fixer after the AI. And this weakens our long-term engagement with the profession. And once again, diminishes our sense of purpose and fulfillment. So it has these negative consequences. So just to close it, these cognitive risks of AI-powered translation tools do not operate in isolation. Altogether, they reshape not only how we think, but also how we feel about translation and about ourselves as translators. If left unaddressed, these tools risk produce learners who are technically efficient, yet cognitively underdeveloped and affectively disengaged. And in my opinion, it is very important, especially for those who are just entering the training. Because, if someone is already trained, if they rely on AI, I think it will still have effects on their cognitive capacities. But it will not be that dangerous for them because they have already developed capacity to textual interpretation, evaluation, critical judgment, etc. But if those in training rely on AI before they develop these capacities, basically they don't give themselves a chance to become qualified translators. So it is very dangerous. So here you can see this cutie who is a Buddhist machine translation zombie. It is an image created by ChatGPT. I asked Chat to create a Buddhist machine translation zombie as a reminder for myself that I'm supposedly a translator, not a translation zombie. And there is a question for you. Are you learning to translate or are you learning to rely? So basically, every time when you choose for different reasons, instead of facing difficulties and challenges of translation, to delegate all this work to AI, ask yourself, what are you learning? Are you learning to translate? Or are you learning to rely on AI? Yeah. Okay. So this is what I wanted to tell you, more or less, today. Of course, I have many more thoughts and concerns, but I think that if I overload you, you will have cognitive overload. Just forget all of it altogether. So I will stop here and I will pass to questions. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the really wonderful talk. I mean, there was nothing in there that I wouldn't fully agree with. And I'm really very, very grateful that you formulated it so skillfully and really, really convincingly. The question I had is, what is the solution? Yeah, okay, the AI is problematic and will create more and more problems, definitely. But is it possible to stay away from it? Yeah. So how would we, do you have any idea or vision how in the future one can avoid the negative consequences, negative influences?
Yeah, thank you, Garrett. Of course, I'm not a visionary. Yeah? I don't know how to necessarily avoid them, but at least I feel responsible to take some measures, in my small chuyul, my small sphere of activity as an educator. So, for example, what I think is important to do, explain the risks to students. So what I always do in class, I'm telling the students, if you are serious about becoming a skilled translator, don't do it. You see, of course, I fully understand that, how many times you tell someone not to do it, they will still do it. But I believe that we have students, at least here in this institution, who are serious about becoming translators, who understand it, you see. And actually, what I also realized that our students are concerned with AI. They come to me and they speak to me about AI. And I learn about AI from them because it is a concern from them. Like the students present here who told me but why would I put so much effort in training as a translator as by the time I graduate, everything will be done by AI? See, so they think about it. It is a problem, that worries them. So then, first of all, we need to explain all these risks, because what happens, once again, this is all available, but it is not profiled. It's not easily there everywhere you go. You open Dharma meter, it doesn't tell you if you want to become a skilled translator, close this translation tool, right? It says, like ChatGPT, hello, welcome, what we're gonna do today, right? And you're like, oh, wow, I like it. When I have these dialogues with chat and, it provides some translation option that I think is idiotic. And I tell him, or Claude, I tell him, you're idiot. This is completely stupid what you produce. And he said, yes, Maria, I agree, so sorry. I like it, you see? Because what happens, with some students, not all, but some students, I point to a mistake, they start arguing with me. Right? I get angry. This is not like this. So you see, like, AI has these incentives, which make it very attractive, and it is this intimacy already there. That's why we like it. You see, it's like it keeps track of your conversations, right? It adapts to your research, like plans or interests. Yeah, it like sounds like he knows you, right? So then I understand why students use it, right? It's not that, like, I'm like, you're stupid, it's like completely like nonsense. Why do you use it? I understand why they use it because I see how it is attractive, right? Like why, like, for example, my professor of translation, Thomas, is here. I remember how frustrating Thomas's classes were when I studied, I had like to spend like hours trying to understand Madhyamaka treatise he gave us to translate, And I was coming to early morning class and he was like, okay, read your translation. Not it. Now you. No, this is not it. No, not it. No. How frustrating it is, right? So I could just, give it to AI. It will give me a translation in 2 seconds. I'll just go to sleep, be happy. So I understand why students do it. But at least, we need to explain that if they do it, they will not develop the skill because frustration is necessary. You see, it's just unavoidable, just in any other activity, first of all, right? And then also, we need to create certain conditions for them when they are forced not to use it. So I have my language studies supervisor. We discuss it with Joe, what we can do in the language study curriculum in order to avoid this AI reliance. For example, closed books in class exams, whether we want it or not. When students cannot use phones, cannot use computers, they just sit there, piece of paper, and they just translate. Of course, we provide them vocab if it is a new vocab, but still, there's no reliance. They cannot, use any crutches in the classroom, closed books exams. And this is our responsibility because what happens, it's also so easy to say, I don't see it. I know, of course I know when students use AI, it's so obvious. Come on, I mean, because I need to consult all these mitras and clauses before class, right? So like I see, for example, if it is like something like Lodryo Nimpo, right? And then they come to class and they say Matisara, right? And I'm like, why Matisara? It can be Mati Garba. But it comes with Matisara only, right? Why? Because Dharma Mitra said so, right? So I know it. But it's so easy to pretend I don't see it, right? So once again, it's our responsibility not to close our eyes and just to say, like, guys, I know you use it. Don't do it. Last warning, don't do it. I'll fail you. You use it, I fail you, right? So at least they know that it is not like, hide and seek when they use it and we pretend they don't use it, right? So it is our responsibility. At least here, something I can influence. I will make effort to do it, yeah. But yeah, I agree. It's like I read also a very interesting paper, if you want, I share with you, in New York Times. So New York University professors say that, how many times we warn students not to use AI, they still use AI. Yeah, but we need to understand also why they use it, right? So I tried to explain it a little bit today. So yeah, we cannot avoid AI. Of course, it is already there. It is in the classroom. If you think that you are alone in your intermediate translation classroom, you are not. You are together with AI, whether it's Claude or whatever, right? They're always there. And students always have access to it. even in the classroom. You see? So just to be aware of it as well. Yeah? But of course, I don't have answers, but at least I believe that people who are serious, they should think about it. But it creates a lot of challenges also for us, like, because a student who uses AI will perform better, seemingly perform better than a student who doesn't. Right? So then imagine you need to grade papers, right? And then AI generated paper, which very smartly AI generated, right? You cannot detect it in any AI detector, yeah? Will look better. You will give a higher grade, for example, right? Is it fair? It is not. You see? Many, many questions. So basically the evaluation system is also not stimulative to not using AI. Because if the whole education, I mean, I hope here at RY we do not promote it, but still, students do compete for grades. Whether we want it or not, they want an A because scholarship depend on A, right? PhD applications depend on A. So then if, their goal is to get an A, right? And then if they use AI, there are more chances they will get an A. Then, of course, it is very discouraging for them, right? It's like, I don't use AI and I get a B just because someone else used it and got an A. The next time I will also use it, right? For what I'm stupid or what? This is like very difficult, because the whole system is like that. I would prefer, like I read that in Japan, until the age of 10 or something, they don't have any exams. They don't get any marks, like no grades. They just study, just learn. Of course, I would like us to be like that, right? Then it will not be stimulating to use AI. But unfortunately, we need to give grades and give diplomas and send us, right? But at least we should try, I think. Yes, please.
Thanks, Maria, for your thought-provoking talk. As you know, these are topics we are all the instructors here are thinking about. I can't say that I agree with your conclusion. Just to say don't do it sounds to me a little bit like the older generation that always says, "Oh, in my time everything was better," and just don't do it. I would rather you gave a lot of hints towards how to learn using it in an intelligent way, like when you gave the example of Thomas saying, "This translation isn't it? Can't you do the same when students come with AI produced translations and then teach them to figure out what is wrong about it, or have them make the experience of how it is that they produced a translation with AI and without, and report on their emotional state. Everything that you told us here, I think students have to learn and experience rather than be told don't use it. And it also makes me think of what is happening in the teaching of Buddhist studies. You could say textbooks are producing the same negative, horrific effect because students could just rely on it and believe anything that is written by Rupert Gething in the textbook. That's it. But we teach them, no, you have to compare and you have to build your own knowledge, and then you can engage critically with it. Can't we do the same with AI-generated translations? I think that is the only way we can move forward. Not saying don't look at it, but knowing everybody does it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Julia. Of course, I have also thought about it, and it is already what is introduced into translation training programs in modern languages. So students are not only taught how to translate, but also how to post-edit AI-generated translations. But you see the problem here, the skill of translating and the skill of editing are not the same skills. So that's the thing. Of course, you can also give them AI-generated translation and ask to find errors in this translation and correct these errors, improve AI-generated translation. Of course, all of it probably should be done, yeah? But this doesn't solve the problem of the development, the skill of translator, see? Because this is a different skill.
But that's not what I meant. I meant that you teach your students to identify how that skill is different so that they appreciate and love translating on their own, or in a way that generates all that emotional involvement and realization and so on, but not because they were told don't do it, but because they really understand from within the advantages of not using it, or knowing when to use it and when not to use it.
Yeah, probably. But you see, the last thing that Vasylieva told us in training, because I asked him, like, okay, so you are an AI developer and you are basically changing my samsara experience, turning it from upside down, and gradually will turn me into potato planter. Yeah, but like my students are concerned. Yeah, why, they will study if, AI will do it. And then he said, oh, I want to give you guys an advice. Like this 4, 5 years, 6 years you are here, you need to become better than AI. See? So when you graduate, you're not a beginner translator, because obviously, just as a beginner programmers who cannot find any job now because AI does it, right? Coding, etc. Beginner translator will also not find any job, right? AI will do it. So he said, you should become better than AI. See, you should become a senior translator when you graduate from here. And I was like, great advice, but the thing is, to become better than AI, they must train without reliance on AI. You see? Because of developing this cognitive skill. And I agree that, of course, we cannot just say, AI is not here and, just don't do it. Yeah, but we need to also integrate it into the process of studying and, for example, like dedicate some time when we generate AI translations and we compare them with human translations that, to show them that, human translations are better. But what if human translations are not better? You see, because often what I see, AI-generated translations are good, sometimes even better than human translations. You see, so it's not, it's not that easy. So I would rather, focus on reasoning and explanation of this, cognitive tasks. Yeah, but definitely we need also somehow probably integrate this also element of AI post-editing in the curriculum.
We mentioned Thomas several times. Thomas, I think you should say something.
Thank you. Thanks, Maria, for a wonderful talk, very thought-provoking, and it's a very timely discussion as well, no? So I thought, first of all, there are so many things that are really important for us to consider there, no? But you mentioned 84,000, and I thought I would just speak a little bit about 84,000 and what they have been doing. Because, like you said, they have been talking about using AI as primary translation. But because we all have to think about that, no? We all have to consider if AI is becoming so good that we cannot distinguish the quality of the translation, and perhaps, like you say, it's better than what we can do as human beings. Who knows how we would judge that? But if that's the impression we get, then obviously we have to think, is that the way to go? So they have been thinking in depth and at length for years now about that, and it's a topic that they keep working on. They have produced a 25-page long position paper on the use of AI in their work, and they have decided very clearly not to rely on AI as a primary translator. That's because of just the state of the art now, but also because of some choices that they made years ago. They decided to create and cultivate a college of translators, the associated translators at 84,000. And they work on the translation of the Kangyur into English. And so, since this has been happening for many years now, there has developed this very unique body of scholarly learning of experts who work together on this great project. So there is, in the English-speaking world, something quite unique there in the context of 84,000. And now should we, they were saying to each other at this point, then say, we have done what we could. Now it's time for AI to take over. It sounds almost absurd, the question, no? There's clearly a value in having experts who can explain why the translation is the way it is, who have intimate human experience with the text and who have developed their understanding collectively. So they have a very clear sense of the value of understanding. So you could say not just scripture, but realization as well. As you, in your talk, many times you mentioned how translation is an excellent practice for developing understanding. And I think that's very true, no? And it's something, the more aware we become of that, any exercise in developing and cultivating understanding, you can see it as some sort of translation process. So to learn to translate is also to learn to think and to understand in many ways. And I think that's obviously, if we can acknowledge that, then there begins to appear also the outline of a program that can continue very well into the future. A few years ago, I thought often we need to do something at RYI in order to make clear to new students who come here to learn language that, you know, the development is going in this direction. And when you come out, it'll be a different world. And what will you do as a translator? That we had to make this clear to prospective students. But now I don't think so anymore, because it's obvious. And those who come here and to similar places where you can learn in-depth translation, as you have explained yourself and shown in your talk, know what it means. They come with a wish to cultivate a skill that is becoming increasingly rare, rapidly diminishing. That kind of, it's beyond skill, no? It's a understanding and wisdom, since it is. So I think we all can develop something very valuable in this process. Of course, nothing is certain as to our own future. Like you said, you're prepared to live with your cat, and I think we all have to have that. Very, real
potatoes.
And potatoes, yeah. I think similarly, and about not a cat, but otherwise potatoes, yes. And but I think that's just how the world is today. There's also, sorry, this terribly long comment, no, but I can't help it somehow, yeah. I also just want to say that in many ways, AI forces us to take Dharma advice more seriously, because, like you have said, shown so clearly in your presentation, the kind of product orientation, and this is my job, my task. Now I have accomplished it. Here is the product. It's my product, which. The purchase of that kind of mindset is decreasing, no? Because you can get so much for free and almost instantly. So the sense of ownership is eroded through AI. Like, what is it really that I can do? What are my own abilities? And that is something that, it's a question that Buddhism has been asking us since forever, no? And so we stand face to face with dependent origination in a way that is perhaps more strongly the case than ever. And so the present moment becomes tremendously important. Why am I doing what I'm doing right now? If it's not with a view to be getting into a secure position that looks like such and such and such after such and such many years, then why am I doing what I am doing? And Buddhism, again, has so much advice in terms of making a situation meaningful. No matter where we are and what we do, there's plenty of advice, for how it can become a deeply enriching Dharma journey, our life. So again, AI forces us to come to terms with those instructions. And if this kind of lack of ownership and then genuine care for sentient beings, if that is where we're coming from, then I think we will find plenty of stuff to do. Yeah? How we survive and how our life will look like, I don't know. But I feel quite confident that if we can really lean into this lack of ownership combined with genuine care for sentient beings, then maybe AI can be a blessing also for us all. Yeah? So sorry to end on a very positive note, but I think it's...
And today's Guru Rinpoche Day, yeah? And Guru Rinpoche said that, even when everyone will die from starvation, my followers will not have hunger, right? That's why my cat and I hope.
I won't stop now. It's just one more thing. Also in 84,000, they've come to this conclusion that at the same time they take AI very seriously and try to work with any new technology, and also look at what they 84,000 with their scholarly learning, with their in-depth understanding of the Buddhist scripture, what they can contribute to alignment development. And I think there's such a potential. It's hard to imagine just how much Buddhism can contribute to the development of AI, precisely because it has the resources for turning these kinds of challenges into something different. And we are so used to thinking in terms of ownership. Buddhism has a whole world made that unfolds on the basis of no ownership. So I think, that in general, and then you could take 84,000 as a good example of how you can keep the human dimension alive and kicking, and at the same time also dive into the emerging technology. So again, a positive note. Thank you so much. It was really fascinating, and you got around so many key issues that we all need to keep in mind. So really, very grateful for your talk today.
Thank you so much. And just a spoiler, on February 4, Professor Thomas Doppler will have floor in this room to speak about AI-related issues as well. And so please all join us. I'm sure it will be fascinating. He will speak about how AI can help you to master debate, right? But I'm sure not only that, many other things, right? So I'm really looking forward to your talk. Okay, yeah, please.
Hi, I'm an outsider. I'm very glad to be here.
You're an insider, you're sitting here.
Thank you so much. I don't want to embarrass my longtime friend. So I actually work on machines. I fix cars. And when I think about working on a machine, it's all the machine defines the problem every single time. And then that makes me as a human being always a respondent, not necessarily a creator. But as a human, I want to create, I want to make or do or sit or be or something. So my question comes out of listening to your interesting talk. One of the concepts that I really liked that you named was when people get addicted to the relief of the cognitive deficit. Like, so when a person wants to learn, they have that, I can be open to this. And so they might call that a cognitive deficit. So my question is, what's the difference between being addicted to the relief of cognitive deficit reduction and the simplification one experiences in creative thinking, right? You understand? Oh, so when you make something, the whole world is like, oh, I want to make something. I want to make something. And you've got your tools, you got your habits, you got your media, you have your friends, you have your ideas, you have your body of work, you have your capacity of the day. You just want to go like, you just want to make something. And you can't do that. You have to sit still and figure out, oh, so this is the mark I want to make. How can I make this well? And then a person learns through the process of creativity. And so it's like this tension of reduction while extending as a human. So I'm saying there's a simplification that can happen with the creative gesture.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I also really like machines a lot. Yeah. Everything I do with my hands give me a lot of fulfillment, even more fulfillment than when I sit staring at the computer screen. So I also considering some handwork apart from planting potatoes in the AI future. You see, like this whole idea of creativity, once again, yeah, for me, like creativity is always related to fulfillment, right? So like any sort of creativity, right? So this is the most humane activity, right? Creating something, whether it's music or art or architecture or translation, which is also a creativity act, right? So then, of course, we can still do it and have this strong urge of self-expression, because this is how humans are, right? Just our nature just manifests in creativity. And then you see, like, once again, I'm not the right person to speak about it. Like, we have Professor Diane Denis, who is an art creativity person. Yeah, so you should talk to her about that. But, of course, we can also use AI in order to do it together. Why not? Yeah. But is it the same or is it different? Probably it is different. Yeah? Like if I take my guitar and I compose and I play, it's not the same if I just use AI to create music, right? Is there fulfillment in it? Probably there is. Is it the same? Probably not, right? It's just different, right? So just everything changes. But what I'm concerned about, especially this very positive presentation of AI, when they say, oh, this is just like industrial revolution. You remember industrial revolution? So it like liberated humans. They could do something more engaging, like more intellectual. This is the opposite. Sorry, guys, but AI comes for the most intellectual, creative jobs, right? Music, architecture, design, all of it is taken. And then manual jobs will be also taken in, because robotics is also comes in, robots come in. But first of all, they take, which is the most dear to me, yeah, because intellectual thing, this is what is most dear to me, because this is how I think our nature as a human is different from something else, right? It's like expression. That's why, like, of course, I'm not happy when AI kind of wants to take it from me, right? I love translation, for example, and I love teaching. So if I think, that I will need to do something else, it's kind of, I feel suffering, right? Suffering of change. And, behind it stands this understanding of how happiness and unhappiness is usually defined in Buddhism. Yeah, because usually what is happiness? This is Rangjung, yeah, self-sufficiency or freedom. And what is unhappiness? This is Shenguang, dependence on something else. So that's why you see, like, even if it creates, like, we can cooperate, right, to do something, but does it increase my happiness or decrease my happiness? I think it decreases my happiness because it creates Shenguang, dependence on something else. Well, happiness by definition is Rangjung, self-sufficiency. You see, so like I try to keep that in mind also when, I need somehow to integrate AI into my life, into my activity. Yeah, of course, it will be very different. We don't know how it will be, and we will need to coexist, right? We cannot just go to the woods. Of course, we can, just go to the woods, say bye. And I have listened to one very nice talk about these predictions of what will be in the future. They said that society will split. Some people will be very pro AI because it will make their life very easy. Yeah, so AI will take their jobs. So governments will have to pay some, something for them to live, but they basically don't need to do anything. Yeah, will provide it, and others will be very strongly against AI because they would think that, their creativity, self-expression, etc., is violated. So they will go away from the cities, which will become the centers of AI use, and they will try to, connect with nature and kind of live more natural life here. So I'm more into natural life somehow. And potatoes are there in the nature, right? So I don't know if I answered your question or just provided a comment, yeah, but still, I really appreciate what you have said about machine and, listening and machine kind of telling you, yeah, and you're just diagnosing what is wrong here. Okay, so maybe one more and yeah. Oh, please. Oh, hello.
Hi, this was a fascinating talk, especially as I'm a language educator with a background in neuroscience. I absolutely loved it.
Background in neuroscience.
Not a huge background in neuroscience, but no, I agree with you. But I wanted to ask about something. This may be slightly outside of your purview. If it is, I apologize. But most of the people studying translation here are studying from the perspective of Vajrayana, which inherently deals with secret texts. And to my understanding, AI and AI translation is based on learning via input. So do you have any thoughts on the issues presented by the possibility of a translator who maybe does not know that AI works based on learning from input, putting in a text that may require empowerment and transmission, and the AI spitting that out to someone who does not have empowerment, transmission, and instruction, and quite possibly even manipulating it, changing it, and presenting a very incorrect version of, say, the Kali Chakra Tantra? Thank you.
Daniel McNamara, our professor, specialist in Kali Chakra Tantra.
Yeah, I was just using that.
Unfortunately, somehow I don't think AI changes much in the field, because you just go to Tibet bookstore, what you will see in Tibet bookstore, all of it will be Tantra, Dzogchen, and Mahamudra, right? Easily available, just take it and read it, right? So this AI does not necessarily contribute much to this secrecy, right? But it's always a question for us as translators, and I personally somehow don't agree that we are Vajrayana based. At least I don't give any tantric text for my students to translate here. I'm keeping within Sutra, Mahāyāna Sutra teachings, or general instruction teachings, because to translate Tantra or something highest Dzogchen or Mahamudra, in my understanding, requires to have the view, right? Tantric view or the view of Dzogchen Mahamudra, which I don't have. So obviously I don't engage in those translations, especially with my students. But this question touches on ethics, right? And because any translator, I'm always approached with requests to translate some practice texts, which are obviously tantric texts, sometimes secret texts, right? So then even, if I know that I'm really serious about it, Dakinis, protectors, etc. Still, even myself, I take it very seriously. And even if I kind of put effort in making sure that the text goes to the people who have Dunhuang and instructions to practice it. But also, I completely understand that as soon as I give something away, even if I put there, this text should be read by someone who's empowerment, this doesn't guarantee anything. So when I give it away, it just goes. And so anyone can take it and use it. And the danger, of course, is there. But at the same time, what's the option? Just to say, I will not translate it, right? And then what? They will just use AI and translate something, right? And still use it? Or still, I will somehow take responsibility and then, of course, understanding that I have no control over anything which I give even to one person, right? This is just how it is. But on the other hand, I cannot take responsibility of other people, right? So this is also a question to their lamas, to their teachers, that they should tell them, you see, that Tantra is secret and all the other teachings needs to be taken very seriously, right? But I'm not a lama and not a teacher in this sense, right? So that's why, like, I'm just a translator and trying to, be responsible. Yeah, but of course, this is a huge issue you're raising. Yeah? Us as responsible translators, and where do our translations go and which purpose they serve? We don't know, right? That's why Chogyam Rinpoche often says that, there's a special hell dedicated for Dharma translators. If we mistranslate something, or misuse something, this is where we will go. Yeah, it's kind of half joke, but whenever Rinpoche says something, it's like, it's not really a joke, right? I take it very seriously. I always think about karmic consequences, but how I translate it and what I'm doing. So it's once again very important part of training. Yeah? We are trying to do here. Just imagine someone takes this self-educative tool, right? Become like self-educated translator. No values transmitted, no lineage transmitted, just like that. Yeah. Big danger. What to do with the things? Okay, can I move to my favorite slide now? This one. Thank you.
Thank you so much,